Welcome and thank you for choosing the Secondary Transition Workshop for Parents. This is a self-guided session that includes individual reflection activities. So at points where I invite you to take part in one of those activities, if you just pause, if you need to, then you can press play at your convenience. There's going to be individual questions and information and guidance, but if there is anything missing that you was hoping from this workshop, then please do get in contact with the Child Health team. You can contact us via email. It's childhealth@medway.gov.uk. Equally, at the end of the presentation, you'll see a QR code that will come up on your screen. If you can scan that, offer us some feedback and insights to other parent workshops you might be interested in, or if there are any other questions or information that you would like, just mark it on that form and somebody will be in touch with you. We do have a Changing Schools Wellbeing resource that some of the Medway schools are going to be using with your children and young people. This will be sent out to parents as well. It'd be really good to reinforce those messages and to think about the process of transition as a whole family, to reinforce those messages, to support your young people to gain independence and to feel equipped for the next step in their education journey. So this workshop, we're going to cover how change can affect young people and adults, because it's a change for us care providers as well as the children. We're going to think about action planning and preparing for all parties involved, any teething issues and concerns that you might have or your children, and how to manage those, and then looking at developing coping strategies and emotional resilience, and then to think about what a successful transition looks like for you and your family. And then at the end there will be signposting information and support details, so you can pause it there too if there's some agencies that you'd like to connect with should you or your family have wider needs than what's captured within this workshop. Okay, so the first exercise that I would invite you to do is casting your mind back to your transition to secondary. What helped you feel brave or ready and equipped for that change? So I invite you to pause and then play when you're ready. Sometimes we can project our own experiences onto our children and young people, whether that's about our education experience, relationships, friendships. So we need to be mindful that we're not projecting or worried about what happened to us maybe happen to our children, because it won't necessarily be the case. We are so grateful to the Lee Academy Trust. We've had some local young people reflect on what helped their transition to secondary, and here is a short video for you to hear what helped them.
Okay, name 2 things that you did that helped you cope with the change between primary and secondary school.
I asked my older cousins and what it was like for them, and then and then just see then compared it to my school to their school, because they're up at Westland, so that kind of helped me a bit, just to see a true opinion of what it was like.
I tried to speak to my friends who are going to the same school as me, so there's quite a few from our primary school, so I just tried to carry on speaking to them and knowing that everyone was in the same boat almost.
I think I don't like change much, so I went to Elsa with Miss Hansford, and she helped me realise that change can be a good thing sometimes, not a bad thing.
Well, we was talking with my friends, even if they weren't going to the same secondary school. I figured that just really helped.
Talking with friends made it a lot better, especially the ones going out, at least I'm not going out, so yeah, it made me feel better.
Thank you so much to those young people and to the Lee Academy for sharing those insights. I hope that was useful, and that you may have picked up on some of those coping strategies. There's quite an array of feelings and ways to manage that. One of the young people reflected there about engaging with an Elsa, and that they don't like change, and I think sometimes as humans, when we're not in control of situations, that can bring a lot of challenging emotions. So have a little think about now what you may need to let go of, or things that you may need to get a bit more control of. And then equally have those conversations with our children and young people. What consistencies can you keep in place as a family to help them have a little bit of continuity and a feeling of familiarity over the next few months and the early months within their transition? Are there out of school activity clubs? Are there trusted adults outside of the family that perhaps they could have those conversations with if they're not open to having them with you? And that's okay, because sometimes our children don't want to talk to us, even though that can be a bit upsetting. But just ensuring that there is a trusted adult that they can connect with, or perhaps peers. A lot of those young people reflected on how they had conversations with cousins, older relatives, or perhaps members within their same age group, just to see what they were feeling and how they were too, and have those conversations and supporting one another. So this can be a really useful exercise to consider what we need to let go of, things that we can't control, and then think about the emotions around that and what strategies we can put into place to help us manage those emotions, because it can be difficult to think that we haven't got control. Equally, as parents, getting familiar with term dates, equipment that's needed, the new lines of communication between the school and child's teachers, going, from one teacher to several, familiarising yourself with that process, perhaps looking on the school website and just feeling better equipped about your experience as a parent, and then how you're going to support your child too, and equally what they need to be aware of, and the methods of communication too. So just keeping that really open, non-judgmental conversations happening between you and your children. How was your day? If they're just good, what was good about it? If it was bad, then perhaps support them and how they feel that they could manage that situation, or what they could do about it, and help them feel a bit more comfortable about situations and the change in settings around them, and staff too. Now, we are human and we do react to stress, and there's a lovely video here by Dr. Daniel Segal that shares how we react to stress. Now, with change usually comes stress, both for us as parents and carers, but for our children and young people too. And here's a short video by Dr. Daniel Segal, giving us a really useful model to share with our children about the impacts of stress and how important it is to check in with ourselves to manage those stress levels, and for us as parents too, to notice and actually validate that, yeah, they might be feeling stressed, and actually they might snap at us, they might be a little bit more less open to communicate, but just letting them come down from that and then approaching a conversation when they're feeling less stressed. But this is a really useful model for you to understand how you feel when you're stressed, but equally for our children too. So feel free to show them this video, or to keep it in mind when we're noticing that they're about to flip their lids.
One of the most rewarding experiences for me has been to study brain science and apply it to the experience of parenting. And the hand model of the brain that I use to teach parents is very useful to understand that. So if you take your thumb and put it in the middle of your palm, put your fingers over the top, this is a very useful model of the brain. And when we can actually see in front of us what's going on in the brain, then we can change what the brain does. So let me walk you through very basically what happens in this brain and the structures in it. And it goes like this. The spinal cord comes up, representing the wrist. And then you have coming up into the skull, the brain stem and the limbic area, which work together to help regulate arousal and your emotions and the way you have a fight, flight, freeze response. These are below the cortex, the limbic and brainstem areas, and the cortex is this higher part of the brain that allows us to perceive the outside world, to think and reason. And this frontmost part of the brain, right behind your forehead, so the person's oriented like this, is actually the part that regulates the subcortical, limbic, and brainstem areas. This regulation is very important because sometimes we can have all sorts of things happen in our life. We're tired, we're exhausted, someone pushes a particular emotional button, and we can flip our lids. So rather than being tuned in and connected and balanced and flexible, we can lose all of that flexibility, even lose moral reasoning, and act in ways that are terrifying to others, including our children. Now, you can actually bring yourself back online and come back to the high road and make a repair with your child, And that's important to explain to them. And you can also use this hand model of the brain to explain to children, even as young as 5 and 6, how to understand when their emotions are rising up from the brainstem and limbic areas here, and how it's overriding the prefrontal area and making it so they may be about to flip their lids. So I've had kids come tell me that they're about to go flip their lids and they need a break. They need a timeout. And by even just naming that, they can tame it. And that's the power of using the hand model for ourselves and our children to help us all make sense of what goes on in the emotional communication that we have in the course of day-to-day life.
So that's a really insightful video that I've watched a few times, and I've also shared with children and young people. And once they understand about that human experience and those reactions within the brain, it enables them to understand how the thought process and their feelings all kind of connect and help them feel a bit more empowered and in control of how they react to certain situations. And we all flip our lids from time to time. We are human, but by reflecting and learning from those experiences, enable us to deal with those challenges in a more resourceful way in the future. So our hippocampus, that's part of that limbic area, and is where we recall and store memories. That enables us to conduct and be in line with those lessons and perhaps approach situations in different ways moving forward. So ways to encourage reflection and consider our unhelpful thoughts or reactions to situations is by journaling, or some other strategies for managing emotional health and well-being might be through art or just spoken word. But with journaling in mind, here's a sample of a self-reflection activity about how we think about a certain situation. So we list what's challenging us in the situation column. So it could be going to school or getting the bus, change of friendship groups, and how they feel about that, and what kind of mood that you know, those emotions and so those thoughts that are either unhelpful, and then the emotions that come from that. So perhaps the headaches or tummy issues, or they're feeling really quite anxious. And then taking a step back and trying to reframe those thoughts, think about how to feel better about those situations. What other thoughts could they have? If they was talking to a friend, what would they tell a friend how to deal with that? And then what are the alternative thoughts to that situation, and how would their mood shift if they had that altered perception on that situation? Could be a useful tool for you as parents as well, worrying about certain situations that might come from the secondary school experience. So it's quite nice to write down the situation, how you're feeling about that, and any thoughts attached to it, and then taking a step back and reflecting on, do you have any evidence to support those thoughts? And then just going down that pathway, keep questioning and checking in with yourself to see if perhaps your perception could be altered. And just by having that reflection, then your emotions, and you feel a bit calmer and more resourced for dealing with that situation. So with that in mind, managing our thoughts and feelings when dealing with change, we need to think about how we are going to step into action and prepare. So I invite you to think about what you've done so far. If anything, absolutely no judgment, that's fine. It's okay if you haven't done anything, but equally, like a climbing wall, that's why I've used this image, it's useful for us to consider the routes that we're going to take. And in order to have considered that route, thinking about uniform, equipment, transport, bus passes, lunches, those kind of things, and planning the route out will enable you to take a step back and consider the easier route. Equally, sometimes there's a little surprise, a little curveball, or something that comes up, and then we learn from those peaks and we can navigate and be better equipped for the other things down the road, because sometimes life has curveballs, and that's okay, we learn from them. So yeah, as I've already alluded to, thinking about any sports equipment, if there's going to be packed lunch, school dinners, journeys, and then also the daily routine. So thinking about wake up times, washing teeth, you know, the personal hygiene around that, and then making sure that the night before everything's kind of bagged up, ready to go, and the timetable is being learned and reinforced over time, and homework and all of those other things. So think about how you're going to manage those things. Here's a nice example of what you could do to manage those priorities and help meet those deadlines, feel calmer about the school day and the secondary education experience. So this is quite nice to do together to help your child feel resourceful and in control of their educational journey. So thinking about what activities need completing first, so prioritising, and this is a fantastic life skill as well, and to think about them moving into further education or employment, prioritising workloads, and then to think about what else needs to happen around that in order for them to meet those needs as well. So thinking about self-care, it could be that there's less time on social media or gaming, but equally we want to keep those extracurricular activities in as well as connecting with their friends. So it's thinking about how we're going to manage that and get a balance. And when it comes to homework, think about setting aside a nice area in the home where they can focus and concentrate and have resources around them if need be. Ideally not in a busy area of the home where perhaps you're preparing meals and there's distraction, but equally it can be challenging in some homes because space isn't always available. So perhaps it might be worth looking into homework clubs, study buddy schemes and things like that within the new setting. Remember as well that it's their homework, it's not yours. For an assessment opportunity of the new staff that's going to be supporting your child in their education experience, enable them to have a true reflection of where they are and their needs academically. So, most certainly support them and be there for them and ensure that they've got a good understanding. And if they haven't, empower them to share that with their subject leads. And just be available to talk with them and praise them when they notice if they've done a good job and if they've noticed an area to work on, because equally that's a fantastic learning experience. So yeah, it's a new stage of life for them, and it's really easy to kind of stress about those changes, not only for them but for you, and for feeling that you're ready for that change, and them too as well. It's a lot of responsibility. Some primary schools don't always have homework, so that can be quite a change. So just talk to them about how they're feeling about the prospects of homework. Equally with getting there, how they're feeling if maybe they've walked before and now they're getting the bus. Sitting down and thinking about the boundaries as well. So if they've never used the bus service before, perhaps talking about communication methods, what would make them feel safe, having a dummy run, having a friend, or perhaps the school will have different transition offers. So that might be something to consider as part of that. But boundaries being discussed and put into place very early on to avoid any challenges or any conflicts, perhaps if they have to go into town to get a second bus or to just get on the bus in the first place, that they don't stay in town longer than X time. And then you know that they're home safe, or when you expect them to be home, they arrive home and there's no safeguarding issues. So doing that really early on, and understand that there's going to be new friendship opportunities, that they might want to go into town one day and come home, but what strategies are you going to have and to put into place with realistic managing expectations for both parties to help them have those opportunities for social interactions, but also keeping them safe at the same time. Most young people have mobile phones now, but equally schools need to manage that as well. So reinforcing those school boundaries, encouraging them to respect the rules within the setting, but also utilising the way that you could connect and communicate for those safeguarding reasons and emergency contacts if need be. So I invite you to pause, have a little reflection of what's covered on this slide. I think about how you're going to manage those conversations about new friendship opportunities, socialising opportunities, keeping those extracurricular activities. Perhaps they might choose to not do that anymore because they'd rather interact with friends, but you know the value behind it, how you would manage those conversations, and perhaps putting boundaries around timing or things to navigate those conversations. So that could be some of the teething issues. There could be concerns around agreements, things are put into place and boundaries are set, but they're not being adhered to. So what things are you concerned about? What things are your children concerned about? Have you asked them what perhaps they're worried about moving forward? Sometimes having these concerns or thinking that we're lacking in an area can lead to self-esteem issues. So it's really important that we have those open conversations with our children and support them to really embody the strengths and the fact that they're able to communicate with you and validate their feelings. Again, kind of reframing the thoughts. So perhaps if they've got a weakness in a certain subject area, identifying that, yeah, I find maths really hard, but there's a group after school on a certain day, or there's lunchtime additional offer available for me to support and improve in my maths journey. If school isn't going well, what is it about school that isn't going too well? Is it any particular area? Is it around friendships? Is it around academia? What is it about school? Tell me what's going well, and then how you can find ways to engage in other supporting activities, or to help them reframe and reconsider that actually school is going okay, but I just need to be a bit more confident about putting my hand up in lessons and sharing my knowledge and skill set. A lot of the academies in Medway have fantastic facilities, lots of different resources. Perhaps sports teams might be a concern for your children, young people, or other offers that are available, and those nerves around venturing into new pursuits. So yeah, helping them understand where that's coming from, what beliefs have they got about themselves, if there's any considerations that you could put into place to help them think about their qualities, to help them identify friendship groups, or knowing that there's other people in the same boat, like the young people earlier reflected on, they knew other people were entering into that school, and that they would have similar feelings. So ways that they can help manage those feelings and concerns, or when they're in that experience, who they can connect with to help navigate those feelings and any issues or concerns. But you're the expert of your children, you have that connection, so trust your gut. If you get a sense that something isn't okay, then just asking that open question. If they just say they don't want to talk about it, like I said in the beginning, if there's a trusted adult or someone else within or around the family that could have those conversations, perhaps give them a little indication that they might need a wellbeing conversation. Or just let them know, okay, but if there is anything, you know, I'm all ears and I'll happily talk to you about anything good or bad. It doesn't matter, because it's all a learning experience. Our young people will be taking risks as they enter into adolescence. We're pre-programmed to take more risks, to break that dependency from our care providers. So it might be that sometimes they've entered into a situation or perhaps displayed a behaviour that they wouldn't have before because they've met different kind of characters, and they might worry about your reactions. So just letting them know that you're aware they're going to be meeting different people, there's going to be different characters around them. So if there's certain things that they've done and experienced, help reflect with them, talk it through and learn from that experience. That will contribute to them having positive emotional health and well-being, as well as a really enriching, supportive, loving relationship with you or that trusted person in their life. So when I say emotional health and well-being, that's about how we feel and we relate to ourselves and interpret the world around us. And that can be really hard during adolescence. We've got those chemical changes happening in our body, equally in our brain. And as I said, for adolescents, we are pre-programmed to break away that dependency and take risks. So letting them know that you're there to help them live happily, have a good quality of life and be a confident individual, that's so important. And how we manage our mental health is really important. I would invite you to consider how you are going to cope with the changes and what coping strategies you have in place, and then think about how you can support your children and young people to develop their coping strategies for this new stage of their life. It's a milestone. So as I said, for you as a parent, it's a milestone. How are you feeling about it? How are you going to manage that, you know, step away from that dependency on you as a care provider? Have you got people around you? What within your community have you got as a lean on? And then who will, what's going to support your child? So it might be that, as I said, with those conversations, that secure attachment experience and good communication, that's going to support them to deal with the transition, and really is paramount with those protective factors for them developing poor emotional health and well-being. As I've alluded to, schools will have policies on behaviour and bullying. That can be some of the concerns around a lot of children and young people and parents. When I've said about those different characters and people from different schools, that can sometimes be a worry. But settings do have policies and procedures for managing those changing dynamics and friendship groups. So ensuring that you're aware of those policies and how to communicate with different college staff or perhaps leads in the setting is really important, and taking that whole school approach and whole family approach around your child and their health and well-being. So here is a quote here from Young Minds, that focusing on our strengths and the capacity to grow and develop helps us to overcome difficulties and challenges. Now, by us having those reflective exercises and conversations with our children and young people, will enable them to have emotional literacy and the language to communicate with us how they are feeling, and for them to understand, like Dr. Daniel Segal said, name it to tame it. If they have all of these feelings going on inside their body, perhaps they're feeling really easily angered, or they're quite snappy, or they're quite tearful, or they can't sleep. Having conversations with your child to allow them to gain insight to what's going on for them will help them develop that emotional literacy and the language to articulate and communicate their needs effectively with you or with staff in their new school. Equally, as I said about, you know, those boundaries, allowing our children to gain independence and make mistakes. And learn from those experiences. They develop their independence, they get a good sense of self. They might have got, you know, tried out some behaviours or experienced some friendship groups and learnt from that, and then realise that they're choosing different friendship groups, different opportunities, different activities, and it's making sense of themselves and the world around them. But sleep is one of the most important things. It's when our brain and our body heals. Our brain's like a little filing cabinet system. So all of those lessons, all of those experiences in the day are sorted out and kind of put away into our brain. And then, as I alluded to earlier, from a previous experience, if we're faced to a similar challenge, we'll think, okay, our brain will go to how we managed it before, what not to do, what we could try different, and then to manage those situations better. But sleep is hugely important, not only for learning, also for managing our energy levels and our nutritional needs. I don't know if you've noticed, perhaps when you're feeling a little bit tired, you might reach for a sugary snack or caffeine for that injection of energy, when in fact what we need is sleep. So it's super important. But equally, that sleep window shifts during adolescence. So if you want to know more about sleep, we do have a sleep workshop resource available. So as I said on the MS forms, if you'd like that, we can share that with you. I've mentioned the word emotional resilience. Here's a slide just to help reinforce that and embed that within ourselves and our children and young people. So to be resilient it's being able to have that positive emotional health and well-being, focusing on what we want from our lives, our needs, and then to identify ways for them to be met. Looking forward to the future will naturally be a product of that, but just by saying to someone to look forward to the future isn't always helpful. So it's identifying their needs and what they want, and then supporting them to have those addressed will naturally help them look forward to the future, feel invested in, feel that their emotions are valid, and that they're equipped and able to look forward to the future. by setting goals, achievable small goals, and then by celebrating however small a step it is in the right direction, we'll build that emotional intelligence and literacy, help them develop strategies. So perhaps if they have a little curveball or a relapse, learning from it and planning that coping strategy, and being afraid to ask for help is quite a usual response from any age group of a person. It's a huge strength to ask for help, and it will also enable those reflective conversations to plan the coping strategies. Also helps us to identify our strengths and be confident. So if someone says, oh my goodness, wow, I'm really impressed by how you've managed this. You know, I was worried about you getting the bus, but you coming back and telling me that you've met people from year 8 and someone that lives down the street, and you'd seen them at the shops, and now, you know, you sound really happy about it. I'm so pleased you've had a good experience. You sound really confident and that you're able to meet new people really well. I'm really proud of you. That will help them identify their strengths and really reinforce that confidence. Learning from experiences and moving on, being open to hear them out, asking them a question. How do you feel about that? What was your part to play? What could you do differently? So getting them to learn and move on, and then introducing new positive ways of thinking and focusing on that positive pathway forward. It's really important to make time to enjoy things as a family and as them as a young person and individual. Again, needs self-care, being healthy, fit, and sleep, and then connecting. So those healthy new relationships, but equally really focusing on those existing relationships within your family, making those stronger, healthier, and then embracing the change, putting energy on how you can shape the future, how you can move forward into this new milestone and new education experience as a whole family. A really useful tool to help improve quality of life for ourselves and for our children and young people is looking at the PERMA model. This is a model developed by Martin Seligman, and it's looking at 5 core elements that help us have a healthy sense of well-being, fulfillment and satisfaction in our lives. So as you can see there, having positive emotions, that's when we feel good about something, we're optimistic, we're able to be creative, and sometimes that's really quite new to someone, that concept of being able to be positive and celebrate creativity. But a way to kind of program that and address that is by inviting someone to write down 3 positive things that happened in their day. So it could even be, I remembered to put all of my stuff in my school bag, and I had all of my packed lunch ready, and just those small wins and positive emotions and celebrating those successes. If you do that over and over, then it becomes more of a natural go-to and builds those neurological pathways for being able to focus on those positive emotions and how that presents in us physically. By being engaged, so being fully immersed in something. This is why mindfulness is so powerful, helping us to have a sense of flow, being in the moment, dealing with those curveballs, thinking about sensations. So if we have got something going on in our bellies or in our heads, you know, where's that coming from? How are we feeling? Concentrating in the now, taking some breaths and helping us be more mindful about our needs or the experiences that we're having at the time. Relationships. Those meaningful relationships and connections is hugely important, equally by developing new ones with the teachers and key people in the new settings, really important. So there's good communication there. And then meaning and having a sense of purpose, a reason why we, you know, are going to school, the reason why we have to do homework, getting a sense of how we contribute to the school community and to our future, having that motivation to invest that time, to invest that energy into whatever it is we want at the end of that secondary experience. And then accomplishments, celebrating those achievements, celebrating the small steps, and even if it is they've identified they don't love a lesson, That's okay, because we can't love every lesson, but let's focus on what we need to do, what we need to learn from that, and then actually, what do you love then? What is your passion? How can we support you to do that more, or to find out more and to enter into other extracurricular and find people that love that too? So here's some top tips for building resilience in young people. Help them foster interest, teach them about responsibilities and obligations, and you know that life isn't always straightforward. Life happens, and not by accommodating to every need and letting them go off on that new journey, will help them to develop those problem solving skills, and interaction with other members of the community, and equally their independence journey, and reinforce their abilities and their additional skills that they gain through their development and their secondary experience. Equally, think about yourself, you know, take a break, have a daily routine for self-care, model those behaviours, model that kind of resilience, but equally the human experience. So if you have had a day where your stress container is full to the brim and you're about to flip your lid, perhaps start getting into the habit of sharing that with your young people, and that you need some time and you really want to help them, or you really want to hear them out, or see the new meme or video they want to show you, but right now you're dealing with the house, you're dealing with cooking, and you'll catch up with them in a little bit, but you just got too much on at the moment. And then that'll let them know, but you know, we are human, we have a certain amount of resilience, and then having those breaks and self-care, so leaving you alone to go and have a bath for 10 minutes, you're modelling those behaviours and you're showing that you're nurturing your resilience too. So again, we've got another video from the students at the Lee Academy talking about tips for us as parents.
What top tips would you give to parents that are supporting their children with moving up to secondary school? What do you think the mums and dads should do?
Don't panic as much as you think you would, because you know you've been at secondary school, so you know how it probably feels. But like, just let them go with the flow, and like don't like be too strict on them. Just, you know, they're getting older, but just like let them flow and just be calm. You know, they're getting older, but yeah, just be calm and don't stress over anything.
I think that the parents are going through a change as well, because you're basically moving schools to like better facilities and that. So I think you should just try and be as calm and relaxed as possible. Just let them do their own thing.
Going into secondary school, everybody changes, parents and children. Personally for me, I think for parents you've got to realise it's not the same when you was in secondary school, because we've been through so much. We've been through a global pandemic, we missed most of year 5 and 6, and to come here today is a really big opportunity for us.
I would say parents don't stress your kids out on things like homework and lessons. Let them settle in first before you start getting worried about homework, and just let them go.
It's not just a change in your child's life, it's also a change in the parents' lives, as their child is moving, slowly becoming an adult, which can be quite scary for them, so we need to try to stay calm.
So that is the current year 7 students reflecting on their experience and offering some tips to parents. So yes, some real wisdom, and I think just reflecting on, it's not even the end of the academic year for them as year 7s, but you can tell that they've got some real qualities and attributes and gained a lot of independence and confidence to share those reflections in both of the videos. So what I would invite you to do now is to have a think about your child or your children. Focus on their strengths. What do you think they're good at? Perhaps reflect on a time when something's been challenging within the family or within their school experience, and that you've been really proud of, or you've noticed in them when they've come through that experience. And perhaps when they're feeling good, or they can share with people what they're good at, what is it, And when they're at their happiest, what are they doing, and how can you make more time for that? So I invite you to pause, have a think about those qualities and attributes you see in your children or your child, and then think of a way how you can share that with them. Or when you notice it, let them know. How could you manage that, and how can you reinforce those positive qualities and strengths? I really hope that that's useful for you and that you're able to share that, because I think sometimes when there are joyful things going on, or when we have experienced or recognised a really good quality in our children, we don't necessarily share that with them or reflect that back to them. We're you know, quite often letting them know when there's certain behaviours we don't appreciate or don't love, but we don't necessarily let them know when there's certain behaviours that we do love and we do enjoy and we want more of for them. Okay, so what does a successful transition look like? Have you planned? Have you curiously questioned your child and connected through your conversations about what their best hopes are? That could be a nice way to invite them to reflect and share with you how they're feeling or what they need from you to support them through the next step on their educational journey. What are your best hopes for going to secondary school? What can I do to support you? Is there anything that I do that isn't helpful, or is there anything that I do already that you want me to continue to do when you go to secondary? And let them know that there's no right or wrong answer, and if they feel that they might upset you by an answer, you won't be upset, because you're open to hear and learn what they need from you in their transition to secondary. And then for you, what is that going to look like? What's your best hopes for your child? What's your best hopes for you, managing all of those emotions and all of the different changes in the routines? Perhaps you've got younger ones and you're, you know, thinking about different journey times and then the dynamics in your day. So how are you going to manage the transition? So I invite you to pause again and reflect on that, to perhaps stimulate conversations with your partner, your wider family support network and your child. So I hope that's a useful reflection activity. And the last couple of slides are looking at the health and wellbeing services in Medway. This slide focuses on the mental health services for adults. So if you would like more information or support from mental health services, we have the single point of access, which is for mental health crisis in Medway. You can call them if there's any concerns around mental health conditions. Perhaps you have a lived experience, or there's someone within the family that's experiencing mental health that's a challenge to manage, then they'll be able to support and signpost you to services. Equally, if there is, you know, if this has been a motive and there's some things going on for you and you feel that perhaps talking therapies might be useful, then there's some information here, and then there's other national support lines and information that you can access. Here are the children and young people resources. So we have the emotional wellbeing and mental health support for young people in Medway. It's a different number for you to contact. There's also a crisis text line for young people to connect with immediate mental health qualified professionals. And Kooth is an online platform for children and young people aged 10 to 25 to access qualified counsellors. And for any young person that's experiencing anxiety, perhaps using self-harm as a coping strategy, or has suicidal thoughts, then you can connect with the Emerge service to help them access the clinical services in the community. And then Young Minds is a fantastic resource. There's different information about looking after ourselves, and there's also a parents helpline and different information on mental health conditions, including medication as well. So that's a really nice resource for anyone that has a lived mental health condition and might want to have a little bit more support around them during the next step of their educational journey. So again, any reflections thinking about those services, I'd like you to consider if you have any more questions or would like any more resources, and then if so, please pop it on the feedback form and the QR code I'm about to present now. Thank you so much for your time and for watching the workshop. I hope it's been useful. I hope you have some strategies and some tools in your arsenal to move forward and support your family on the next step of their education journey. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.